Mace Windu was supposed to be everything the Jedi stood for: discipline, strength, mastery of the Force. But when you peel back the layers of calm speeches and stern looks, what you find isn't a hero. It's a cautionary tale in Jedi form. Mace wasn't the Order's wisest master. He was its biggest flaw, wearing a purple lightsaber. He talked about peace, yet he was always ready for war. He claimed to seek balance, but his balance came through domination. And when the galaxy started to fall apart, Mace didn't question the system. He tightened his grip. Like a man trying to stop a sandstorm with his bare hands, he only made it worse. The tragedy of Mace Windu isn't that he died. It's that he never understood why he was doomed to. He thought righteousness was immunity from corruption, but he never realized that moral certainty is just arrogance in disguise. The dark side didn't need to corrupt him. He was already blind to how close he stood to it. What makes Mace fascinating isn't his failure. It's what that failure says about the Jedi themselves. They raised him to be a weapon, then worshipped him for acting like one. They built an order that mistook obedience for wisdom, and then wondered why it collapsed under the weight of its own control. Every time Mace stood before Anakin, Yoda, or Palpatine, he revealed what the Jedi truly feared: someone who questioned them. Someone who saw that the difference between the Jedi and the Sith wasn't morality, it was marketing. In this video, we'll break down how Mace Windu wasn't just a bad Jedi. He was the embodiment of everything wrong with the Order, how his arrogance doomed their legacy, and why his downfall proved that sometimes the real villains wear robes, not masks. When people think of Mace Windu, they usually imagine the purple lightsaber, the calm voice, and the absolute confidence that radiated from him in every scene. But beneath all that control was a man who didn't live by the Jedi code. He enforced it like law. Mace wasn't the wise monk the Order needed. He was the guard dog that bit first and meditated later. The moment you challenge him or his precious council, you're an enemy, not of the Republic, but of the Jedi themselves. It's easy to see Mace as this stoic master who stood above emotion. But watch his scenes again. He's always condescending, dismissive, and ready to judge. Whether it's Anakin's frustration, Yoda's caution, or Palpatine's manipulation, Mace's instinct is to dominate the conversation. He doesn't listen. He commands. Even his tone in the Clone Wars shows this pattern. His leadership isn't built on empathy, it's built on hierarchy. And the biggest irony is that Mace believed he was the voice of balance. He created an entire form of lightsaber combat, Varpad, that channeled his inner darkness into controlled aggression. That's not peace. That's violence in a robe. Varpad is essentially Jedi-sanctioned rage, and it's telling that Mace was the only one strong enough, or maybe stubborn enough, to use it without falling. At least that's what he told himself. Mace's distrust of Anakin was the perfect example of his hypocrisy. He told Anakin to let go of fear, to be patient, to trust the Council. But he never trusted Anakin. He constantly reminded him of his rank, his inexperience, and his failures. And when Anakin finally came to him about Palpatine being a Sith Lord, Mace still treated it like a manipulation. He didn't want the truth. He wanted control over who got to speak it. When Mace marched into the Chancellor's office with 3 Jedi Masters to arrest Palpatine, it wasn't justice. It was a coup. He didn't have the Senate's approval, and he didn't even wait for Anakin's help. He was judge, jury, and executioner. For someone who preached restraint, Mace had no problem swinging his lightsaber first and rationalizing later. His actions were born from ego and fear disguised as duty. And if we're honest, Mace didn't fail because of Anakin. He failed because of himself. He underestimated Palpatine, overestimated his own authority, and refused to see how his arrogance mirrored the very thing he swore to destroy. The Sith believed they were superior because they sought power. Mace believed he was superior because he denied it. Different paths, same pride. Mace's relationship with the Jedi Council only amplified this problem. The Council enabled him, giving him free rein to interpret the code however he wanted. He became their enforcer, the final word in every debate. And when you have someone like that at the top, the entire system starts to rot. The Jedi stopped asking, "Should we?" and started asking, "Will Mace approve?" That's the real tragedy of his character. He wasn't corrupted by the dark side, he was corrupted by certainty. He believed so deeply in the righteousness of his own judgment that he couldn't imagine being wrong. And in a galaxy where even Yoda questioned the future, that made Mace Windu more dangerous than any Sith. Mace Windu wasn't just a bad mentor to Anakin, he was a symbol of the Jedi's blindness. The man who claimed to see through deception couldn't see the deceit in his own reflection. His fall wasn't just from a window, it was from the illusion that he was ever above the chaos he created. And maybe that's the cruelest truth of all. Mace Windu didn't need to turn to the dark side to fall. He was already halfway there. To understand why Mace Windu failed so completely, you have to understand what he represented in the Jedi Order. He wasn't a philosopher like Yoda or a diplomat like Obi-Wan. He was the Order's sword, its executioner dressed in meditation beads. The Jedi loved to pretend they were peacekeepers, but someone like Mace shows what that really meant. An army general who quotes poetry after a bombing run. In the Clone Wars, Mace delivers one of his most revealing lines to the clones themselves. He tells them, "You're soldiers of the Republic, not Jedi," as if their lives were worth less than his cause. There's no empathy, no humanity, just hierarchy. And yet, when Order 66 happens, those same soldiers don't hesitate to kill him. That's poetic justice, if there ever was any. Mace was so consumed by the illusion of moral authority that he couldn't tell when he'd become a tyrant. He looked at every problem through the lens of Jedi superiority. The Senate was corrupt, so he distrusted democracy. The Chosen One was unstable, so he distrusted destiny. Everyone around him became either a pawn or a threat, never an equal. That's not balance. That's dictatorship with extra robes. And what's fascinating is how his ideology parallels the Sith more than the Jedi would ever admit. Both believed in structure, hierarchy, and dominance through conviction. The only difference was that the Sith were honest about it. Palpatine didn't pretend to be humble. Mace did, and that made him even more dangerous because his tyranny came wrapped in morality. If Mace had lived after the fall of the Jedi, he wouldn't have learned from it. He would have doubled down. You can imagine him forming his own splinter group of Jedi loyalists, convinced they just needed to be stricter, purer, more obedient to the code. He'd have been the very thing the galaxy feared, an order without mercy and without self-awareness. What's tragic is that Mace wasn't a villain by design. He was the inevitable result of Jedi culture. A child raised in the temple since infancy, trained to believe emotion is weakness, individuality is danger, and obedience is virtue. What do you think happens when that child grows up and gets power? You get Mace Windu, a man who can't feel compassion because he was never allowed to. His fall reminds us that not every failure in Star Wars comes from temptation. Some come from repression. Mace spent his life burying emotion until all that was left was anger disguised as conviction. And when he finally unleashed it against Palpatine, the dark side didn't need to seduce him. It just stepped aside and let him fall. Even Samuel L. Jackson has said that Mace saw things in black and white, good and evil, right and wrong. But that lack of nuance was his flaw. The galaxy isn't binary, and yet the Jedi raised him to think it was. He was their perfect soldier, and their greatest liability all at once. Mace Windu didn't just fail to stop Palpatine. He proved that the Jedi never really understood what they were fighting. Because how do you defeat darkness when you've spent your whole life pretending it doesn't exist inside you? And maybe that's the true lesson Mace left behind. Not as a hero or martyr, but as the warning sign that the Jedi never read. Mace Windu's story could have been one of redemption, but Star Wars made it one of reflection. His death wasn't just the end of a character, it was the moment the Jedi Order's illusion shattered completely. The galaxy didn't lose a hero that day. It lost its excuse to keep pretending the Jedi were infallible. Imagine for a second if Mace had survived that fall. Picture him in exile, nursing his wounds, realizing the very institution he fought for had been built on lies. Would he have repented, or would he have become something darker? Given his pride, he might have become the galaxy's first true grey Jedi, but one born not of balance, but bitterness. The irony is that Mace thought he could see through the dark side. But it was his blindness to his own flaws that doomed him. He believed his anger was discipline, his arrogance was confidence, his mistrust was wisdom. And that's what makes him such a fascinating character, Because Mace Windu wasn't evil. He was human. And the Jedi never taught him how to be one. Even his interactions with Anakin are tragically poetic. The very man he refused to trust became the one who destroyed him. Not because Anakin hated him, but because Mace had built a world where trust was impossible. Their dynamic is the essence of Star Wars tragedy. Two men trying to do what's right but poisoned by systems that never let them understand what right truly meant. Fans often defend Mace by saying he was doing his duty, but duty without empathy is just obedience. And obedience without understanding is slavery. The Jedi thought they were free because they served the Force, but in truth, they served their own code, and Mace Windu was its greatest prisoner. What's poetic about his downfall is that it mirrors the Republic itself. Both were noble in theory, corrupt in practice, and destined to collapse under the weight of their own self-righteousness. Mace Windu was the face of a dying era, an era that couldn't change, couldn't adapt, and couldn't admit its own failures until it was too late. And yet, there's something deeply sad about him too. You can see glimpses of a man who could have been great, a version of Mace who understood compassion, who questioned the council, who believed in the person instead of the rule. But that version never had a chance to exist because the Jedi made sure he never learned how to feel. In the end, Mace Windu didn't fall to darkness. He fell to dogma. The same dogma that told the Jedi to deny fear, to suppress love, to reject humanity in pursuit of perfection. And perfection, as always, was their undoing. Maybe that's why Star Wars still needs characters like Mace. Because he's the proof that even the strongest light can cast the darkest shadow. His story reminds us that heroism without humility isn't heroism at all. It's hubris in disguise. And maybe the greatest lesson Mace Windu ever taught the galaxy is that the Jedi didn't need more power. They needed more honesty.
Thank you for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that share button. My main channel is Critical Analysis Hub, where I post Star Wars content about the movies. My secondary channel is Critical Analysis Hub Plus, where I focus on the shows of Star Wars. And my third channel is Critical Analysis Hub XP, where I post comic books. Be sure to take a moment and check them out. Thanks, and may the Force be with you.